Up next on The Reveal.
What did he hit you with?
That's all I can remember.
Serious crimes but lenient sentences. We ask the judge responsible why.
Andy Parati, 11 Alive News.
In the beginning, I had rage. I was totally enraged.
He was given life in prison for a crime he didn't commit. A new program designed to right wrongs.
Are you ready to look at him and say, I think you made a mistake?
She asked God to take her home to heaven because she couldn't go on.
She was supposed to get better, but she only got worse.
I didn't understand why I was still having so much pain all the time.
And her nursing aide was to blame. From our Midtown studios in Atlanta, The Reveal begins now with our multi-Emmy and National Mural Award-winning team of investigators.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Brendan Keefe.
And I'm Faith Abube. An exclusive Reveal investigation uncovers a Georgia judge accused of routinely handing down lenient sentences for serious crimes.
In some cases, not following state-required sentencing guidelines. One involves a repeat domestic violence offender who nearly killed his wife.
Cherokee 911, address of your emergency.
I think I've got a victim of a domestic dispute in my parking lot. She's got 2 black eyes.
Wendy Jo Simpkins waits for an ambulance inside her SUV after her husband beat her inside their Cherokee County home in 2018. The injuries even shocking a deputy.
Oh, shit. What did he hit you with?
That's all I can remember. I guess the whole time I just kept thinking I wanted to stop. That's all I kept saying to myself in my head.
A short time later, investigators arrest her husband, David Kemp.
You have the right to remain silent.
And on July 31st, 2019, a judge sentenced Kemp to 40 years in prison. Stephanie Woodard is Hall County's Solicitor General and chair of Georgia's Commission on Family Violence.
This is a case that shocks the consciousness, the injuries, the path forward that we can see, because the public in general aren't used to seeing this.
But before Kemp's arrest, just a month before, he appeared here inside Cherokee County Judge Michelle Holmeyer's courtroom, charged with battery after hitting his wife. At the time, it was his second domestic violence offense. And according to state law, that means the judge was required to sentence Kemp to something called a Family Violence Intervention Program. It's a 24-week course designed to rehabilitate habitual offenders.
The judge should have ordered it unless there was a factual reason that was enunciated on the record of why it was not appropriate.
But Judge Holmeyer didn't do that, instead giving him time served and probation. 25 days later, Kemp nearly killed his wife.
What was your reaction when you saw that this defendant was not sentenced to this program?
It is a call to arms for me.
This isn't the first time someone has accused Judge Holmeyer of handing down or recommending lenient sentencing. It started here at the county solicitor's office when she worked as a prosecutor in 2012. Holmeyer's boss at the time reprimanded her for recommending overly lenient sentences involving a speeding and a DUI case. 4 months later, as a judge, she allowed a driver ticketed for speeding 93 in his 65 to post an essay on social media instead of paying a fine. The surprised driver even tweeting, "I got out of a ticket by posting on Facebook about the dangers of speeding." Bye, Felicia.
Cherokee County 911 with location of your emergency.
But the one crime that stands out the most, Judge Holmeyer's sentences for DUIs.
Sir, you've been placed under arrest for driving under the influence. What I need you to do is put your hands.
According to a report created by the county's DUI court, over the past 3 years, Judge Holmeyer has sentenced 7 DUI offenders below what the state law requires.
Okay, so what's the third way?
Karen Morrison is a law professor at Georgia State University.
What message does that send to the community?
So if a judge is consistently lenient with a particular class of cases, that could potentially send a message that the judge doesn't take those types of crimes that seriously, or believes that those crimes are treated overly harshly legislatively. This is more unusual because while there's debate about the narcotics laws, there aren't debates in the same way about whether driving under the influence should be treated more leniently.
Good morning, Cherokee County. How's everyone this morning?
The Reveal reached out to Judge Homeyer multiple times for about a month for an interview. She never responded. So we caught up with her this past Tuesday before a campaign event. Judge Homeyer, Andy Parati, 11 Alive News. How are you? Good. Nice to meet you. I wanted to ask you some questions.
Yeah, thank you.
She kept walking, and so did we. Do you have anything to say about the David Kim case? Why didn't you sentence him to a family violence intervention program?
No comment.
Do you have anything to say?
No comment.
You're an elected judge. Do you really think that you can't talk about any closed cases? An elected official walking away from questions about levying lenient sentences for serious crimes.
I didn't want him to hit me anymore. I couldn't handle it anymore.
There are little to no repercussions for judges who do not follow sentencing guidelines. Cherokee County's court administrator says the state's judicial code of conduct frowns upon judges speaking about closed cases or even their judicial philosophy. Her recommendation for the public to hold judges accountable: do it at the ballot box.
Next on The Reveal, they are murderers, armed robbers, rapists, and child molesters. Or are they? A special task force created in Georgia to look at wrongful convictions.
These are going to be extraordinary cases. They just have to be.
If you have a news tip or a comment on one of our investigations, email us at thereveal@11alive.com.
More than 1,600 people are sitting in Georgia prisons for crimes they did not commit, or at least that's what studies by the Innocence Project estimate. And now one Georgia DA says he's ready to do something about it. He's reopening cases defendants say the judicial system got wrong.
You told me, you gave me a 10 o'clock curfew. After 10 o'clock, you got an alarm on. I can't go outside.
Jimmy Gardner sits by his mama in South Georgia, laughing about her strict rules.
This was his room. This was his room.
She wouldn't give him a door to his bedroom or even a key to the house.
I tell you, that was challenging.
It's the kind of squabbles you expect with a teen, except Gardner wasn't a teen at the time. He was 50 years old.
They didn't know my evolution. They didn't know me as a man.
That's because Gardner became a man in prison. He was only 20 when the police in West Virginia questioned him about 2 sexual assaults. Gardner, a young, ambitious baseball player, says he was actually on the mound, pitching during one of the attacks.
At the time these crimes were committed, I was in Charleston, West Virginia. I was playing for the Charleston Wheelers, and this was the Sally League.
But the state's chief blood analyst testified Gardner's DNA was a close match. After his conviction, that analyst, Fred Zane, came under fire for a pattern of misconduct and falsifying information. All of his cases came into question. Still, it took another 22 years for a federal judge to consider the real lab results, tests that actually excluded Gardner as a suspect.
I don't think that any human being should spend 1 second in a jail if that person is not justly convicted.
It's stories like Gardner's that led Fulton County District Attorney Paul Howard to create Georgia's first conviction integrity unit.
We'll take the elevator up 1 floor.
And he's hired Amy Maxwell, who used to lead the Georgia Innocence Project, to review the petitions filed claiming the criminal justice system made a mistake.
It takes a lot of courage and a lot of integrity for an elected official to look at his own decisions to make sure that justice was done.
Are you ready to look at him and say, I think you made a mistake?
I am. That's my job. That's why he hired me.
In her first 5 months on the job, Maxwell has received 62 petitions.
Those boxes represent 3 cases that I'm working on.
31 of those from defendants who say they are innocent.
How do you even look at these cases and sort fact from fiction?
Well, you know, it is a difficult process. We can't just look at what someone says, nor can we just look at our file. We're going to have to basically reinvestigate these cases.
These are serious offenses. 23 involve murder, 12 armed robberies, 4 rapes, there is kidnapping and child molestation.
What are some of the
concerns or issues that are being raised with these cases?
There are things like witnesses that were never interviewed, or an alibi that nobody checked on, including the defense lawyer.
Defense attorneys submitted most of the petitions, but 18 came directly from the accused. Gardner is not surprised.
How many letters? How many petitions?
Oh,
Who did you write?
You're talking hundreds. I've written ACLU. I've written organizations. I've written NAACP, Action Network. I've written lawyers. I've written congressmen, congresswomen, senators. I've written the presidents, plural.
Since Howard became the district attorney in 1997, 4 people have had their convictions overturned. DNA exonerated 1 man. 2 won new trials because the courts ruled prosecutors presented inappropriate or false information. And Howard says the other, a double murder case, his office learned after the trial their key witness was in jail at the time of the crime.
When I confronted him, he admitted that he lied.
There are believed to be 36 conviction integrity units across the country, but Gardner wants more. He never had a DA like Howard willing to give his case a second look.
This is where I pray. I goes in my closet and I close this door.
Instead, Gardner says he had to rely on God.
She went in the closet and prayed and got the answer. Prayer is powerful.
Gardner says soon after, a blue butterfly landed on his hand and stayed there for nearly 2 hours.
And I walked around that compound and held conversations with people, and that butterfly stayed on my hand the entire time.
When it flew away, it went right over the barbed wire, out of the prison gate. A week later, he stood before the federal judge that set him free.
And he said, "Don't thank me." He said, "I didn't do anything that shouldn't have been done 27 years ago." He said, "Look, I did what was right."
Defendants always have a right to appeal their cases, so why is a unit like this even necessary?
An appeal really focuses on mistakes that might have been made at trial. It doesn't really take into account new evidence or racial bias. But an integrity unit can retest DNA evidence, it can check an alibi, or even reinvestigate a crime.
Rebecca, are any of these cases high profile, and who has filed a petition for review?
The DA's office was willing to tell me what types of cases had filed for petition, but they wouldn't tell me the names of those involved because they said they don't want to upset any of the victims or perhaps impact new evidence until they've actually been able to make a decision on whether they think a mistake might have been made.
Up next on The Reveal.
Nothing shows up in her urine that any pain medicine is there.
A nursing home aide accused of stealing pain meds from patients, the missed opportunities to prevent it.
Would you view that as risk to the public?
Welcome back to The Reveal. A Minnesota nurse assigned to take care of an elderly woman instead steals her prescription medication, leaving her in excruciating pain.
But our sister station in Minneapolis discovered state health officials knew the nurse had a bad history, but they didn't do anything about it. This case exposes cracks in the system that could be putting others in serious danger.
For Levon Borsheim, the pain was so intense.
It wasn't easy to take.
Her husband Roger says his bride of 60 years wanted to die.
She asked God to take her home to heaven because she couldn't go on.
Levon had been prescribed so many opioids meant to dull the agony.
I didn't understand why I was still having so much pain all the time.
Even the doctors couldn't figure out why they weren't working until they finally did a test.
Nothing shows up in her urine that any pain medicine is there.
No meds in her system? How could that be? Levon had her medication laid out each week by a home health nurse named La Vang.
We felt that he was our friend.
A man they trusted.
And he broke our trust.
So, Mom? After that stunning test, their daughters called police and set up a sting. When officers searched Vang's car, records show they found pills and several empty prescription bottles belonging to Levon. He had been stealing them.
How did you feel?
Very violated.
Even worse, not only had he been taking the oxycodone for months, Vang admitted to police that he'd replaced them with Tylenol. Investigators also found allergy medication, pills that made Levon lethargic but still left her in excruciating pain.
It broke our hearts.
We right away felt he must be doing this to others too.
Turns out their hunch was right, and state regulators had failed to act.
KARE 11 has learned that months before Vang ever stepped foot into the Borsheim home, he'd been fired from 2 home health agencies in late 2017. In both cases, patients, as many as 8 of them, accused Vang of stealing their pain meds. Those firings, by law, had to be reported to the Board of Nursing.
What else did they know? Well, in March, right around the time Vang started with the Borsheims, the Minnesota Department of Health CC'd the board about a nurse they found responsible for missing pain medication. Vang isn't named, but KARE 11 has confirmed through sources he is that nurse.
That's a very, very serious thing. Very serious. It demands action.
So did the board take action? Not that the Borsheims or the public could see. Not after those firings in late 2017. Not after that Department of Health finding in March of 2018. It took 5 more months. No action until after police arrested and charged Vang with stealing from Levon. At the time of the arrest, Vang told police he was starting at a place called First Stat in a few days. Another job with access to patients' pain meds.
It's really troubling that somebody can engage in this kind of behavior for so long and not get stopped.
Representative Tina Liebling thought this problem had been fixed when they gave the board more power. That was in response to a 2015 audit that found the Board of Nursing has acted too slowly to suspend nurses when public safety is at risk. We showed her Vang's history.
Would you view that as risk to the public?
Well, I certainly would.
What does that tell you?
Well, it tells me that the process is far too slow.
The director of the nursing board declined an on-camera interview. She says they have removed other nurses through agreements. But for a temporary suspension, they must determine whether the board has sufficient evidence to prove a violation of the law. But take a look at these numbers. The number of times the board has ordered a temporary suspension initially spiked after that 2015 audit, but it's fallen every year since, just 2 in the past 2 years. Since complaints aren't public, there's no way to know how many other La Vangs slip through the cracks.
Your report has really put a spotlight on a hole in the system.
This fall, Vang was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. An unusually long sentence because of what prosecutors called callous disregard and causing Levon to suffer needlessly for months. Levon's health has since declined.
She has gone through much pain and misery.
So has the Borsheims' faith in those who should have protected them.
How does that make you feel that no one stopped him?
Somebody didn't do their job.
It's a national problem with a long history here in Georgia, too. We've been investigating claims of drug abuse and drug diversion by medical professionals in Georgia. And we found 4 years after our first report, our state agency still doesn't have a program to track any of these abuses. Like Minnesota, Georgia does have a mandatory reporting law, but there is still a lot of concern that not every company is doing it.
For more on these investigations or to submit a tip to the Reveal team, text REVEAL to 404-873-9114 or email us at thereveal@11alive.com. For more on these investigations or to submit a tip to the Reveal team, text REVEAL to 404-873-9114 or email us at thereveal@11alive.com. Thanks for watching The Reveal, the nation's only weekly local investigative show.
We'll see you next Sunday for another edition of The Reveal.